Yep, I'm good.
All right. Yep. What's up, Dolphins fans? Welcome to this week's edition of Dolphins Deep Dive. I'm Chris Perkins, your Sun Sentinel Dolphins columnist. That's David Furones, your Sun Sentinel Dolphins beat writer. And look, we have meaningful football in December and January. Your Miami Dolphins riding a 5-game winning streak in first place in the AFC East. They're about to embark on this crucial 3-game road swing at the San Francisco 49ers, at the LA Chargers, at Buffalo in the next 3 weeks. You know, the Dolphins have scored 30 or more points in the last 4 games, but we're keeping an eye on left tackle Teron Armstead and his pectoral injury. He's out indefinitely. Seems like he's surely out this week, possibly next week, maybe longer. We're also keeping an eye on right tackle Austin Jackson and his ankle injury, the same ankle he injured previously, but not the same injury, we think. And look, both of those are significant because you know who's waiting for him. 49ers edge rusher Nick Bosa and his 11.5 sacks. He's 3rd in the NFL, but still, things looking good for your Miami Dolphins. Hey, here's the deal. If they split their next 6 games, they have 11 wins, and they're definitely in the playoffs. We're about to talk about it all. Let's dive in. All right, Furones, one of the storylines here, you know, we've got the 3 big games and we've got 3 big storylines, but let's go one game at a time because we know the 3 storylines are the Dolphins visiting the 49ers, which means Mike McDaniel visits his friend and mentor Kyle Shanahan. The following week, the Dolphins visit the Chargers, which means we revisit that Tua Justin Herbert storyline. And then the Dolphins visit Buffalo, which is the AFC East power struggle. But again, first things first, tell me about McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan.
Someone wants lunch already?
I know. I know exactly. Hey, I had leftover turkey, man. We'll talk about the statute of limitations on Thanksgiving turkey later, but I'm still chipping off of mine. But McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan, is it a possibility that their competitiveness leads to bad decision-making on the field as far as maybe one of them takes too many chances or one of them is too conservative just in their zeal to beat the other? Is that a possibility, do you think?
And Perk, don't give away all our storylines that we're going to put out there on sunsentinel.com over the next 3 weeks in one show. Let's save some for these next couple of weeks here with all these storylines that we got. But, yeah, Mike McDaniel, of course, has spent 14 years total working with Kyle Shanahan. When you look at his, obviously the last 5 in San Francisco where he rose through the ranks to just 1 year as offensive coordinator before getting this head coaching gig, and the run game coordinator before that, all those years as assistants on the same staff, whether it be in Atlanta, the 1 year in Cleveland, going all the way back to Houston and obviously Washington, when all those future head coaches were on that same staff. And so, I mean, a lot that each can pick apart from each other. I'm always fascinated in these scenarios, who was able to pick up on more tendencies over all those years working together to then implement them when they finally do face off against each other. But, yeah, with Mike McDaniel, then obviously this being his first go-around, sometimes we have seen, like you mentioned, some of those scenarios where over-aggressiveness, let's say, 4th down situations where instead of taking the points, he's gone for it. Sometimes it's backfired. We've seen in a few scenarios, specifically the Pittsburgh one. I remember Chase Edmonds when he was still with the Dolphins, getting stopped on that 4th down run, where really it was more on Edmonds not seeing the hole. It was a great play call in the end. But then there were scenarios where it did work in his favor, and Mike McDaniel, like week 1 against New England, that 4th and 7 right before halftime, and he was able to pull it off. It resulted in a Jalen Waddle touchdown right before half, and really set the tone in that game. So, yeah, will he end up wanting to be over aggressive in a scenario where he wants to beat Kyle Shanahan on the other side? Maybe. I think he is an even-keeled type of coach. He said yesterday when I asked that he's not looking on the other sideline ever, so it's not like it's something that's going to be in the back of his head. And hey, he's not going to be doing an Oklahoma drill. He also joked with Cal Shanahan. So though that I would pay to watch. But I'll be at the game for free working, so I'll see what the players have in store and what game plans each one of them has in store for each other.
You know what? I want to see McDaniel do that Oklahoma drill one day. Didn't he give us that same line about Belichick? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Belichick.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of these days we're going to get him out there to do an Oklahoma drill against some coach. We'll pick an older coach for him. Yeah, maybe a Belichick or something like that, right?
There we go. Yeah. New Year's Day.
Right. Hey, look, but, when we talk about play calling and things like that, the Dolphins have been very good about opponent-specific game plans and opponent-specific matchups. And so, what they did against, let's say, Pittsburgh might not necessarily be what they attempt to do against the 49ers. Some teams are kind of like, well, we're going to do A, B, and C because that's who we are and that's what we do. One thing that I like about McDaniel and this coaching staff is they're very flexible. They're able to look at what they have and what the other team has and say, all right, well, this week Eric Rowe needs to be inactive because we're going to use, Fedulum or Justin Bethel, or this week, this guy needs to be inactive. So I like that. I like the way that McDaniel does that, and that leads me to think that he is going to be he's going to be himself in this game, that he's not going to try to push it. And look, we know that Teron Armstead is not going to be out there playing, and we know that that's going to be something that they have to make up for in some way. And so really that kind of leads to thinking, well, it is out of character for Furones for this team to constantly use max protection, right? We know that Bosa is over there on the other side, but the thing with this offense has been the timing, right? That Tua, that ball is out of his hands and, whatever, 2.7 seconds, whatever that number is, the whole thing is based on timing. And so that would be an area that I would think, well, does McDaniel and the Dolphins, do they deviate from what they've done in the past, and do they play like a 6 offensive line package, or do they keep the running backs? Jeff Wilson is an accomplished blocker. Maybe does Durham Smythe get way more playing time as opposed to Mike Gesicki? Those are the things that are going to be interesting to watch to me, because, again, you can't necessarily go based on what they did against Buffalo or Baltimore or the Jets, because this team is very opponent specific. So I'll be looking to see what McDaniel does there. My guess, as far as the protection packages and helping to alleviate for the absence of Teron Armstead, the expected absence, the probable absence, that we're going to see Jeff Wilson in there blocking a little bit more. Now, if Armstead and Austin Jackson don't play, well, that changes the math a little bit. But do you have any ideas or any clues as to things that McDaniel might do that's game plan specific for the 49ers?
Right. You always want to get the ball out quick if you're Tua, especially if you're going to be potentially without 2 starting tackles. Right. Brandon Shell's been solid on the right side, and then Greg Little will be a huge question mark if he's the starting left tackle. And then obviously for depth reasons, you might have to elevate Kendall Lamb, the veteran that you just signed to the practice squad right away, or Keon Smith, a possibility there. So getting the ball out quick without those 2 tackles, maybe some creativity in the run game, getting the wide receivers involved like McDaniel did so often in San Francisco with Deebo Samuel, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, just keeping those pass rushers honest and making sure they're honest on the edges and not just able to pin their ears back and get after Tua against those tackles. Some extra help, Durham Smythe, pass blocking, potentially, like you said, Jeff Wilson. So how much can Mike Gesicki factor into this game plan? If indeed you need a tight end that is staying back to block more often. So a lot of variables to link into, specifically because you're facing this number one defense. It's number one in points, number one in total defense, rush defense. The run game is going to be big to try to counter that pass rush. And the 49ers do it without sending extra blitzers too. So that's an issue. That presents difficulties because it's not like there's just going to be open spots vacated by blitzes that Tua can quickly identify, as we have seen him be able to process things quickly. It's going to be a lot of just pure mano-a-mano, four-man pass rush, and Dolphins are going to have to win some matchups or keep extra blockers in to max protect.
Yeah. By the way, do I see a Christmas tree over your shoulder? You got some Christmas spirit there for us?
Yeah, a little bit. Not decorated or anything, but it's present. It's present. We're in the spirit.
I like it, baby.
We're going into December. We turn the page on the November slate into December.
That's it.
Post Thanksgiving.
Very appropriate, man. I like it. Very appropriate. All right. Hey, let's go out to our Twitter question. And this one comes to us from Stephen J. Wilson 11. And the question is, which 49ers player gives Miami the most headaches on Sunday? Now, that seems to be a pretty straightforward, obvious one, right? Nick Bosa, but you do have Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. So you do have a lot of possibilities, but I think we've got to go for Bosa, right? Especially considering the Dolphins' tackle position. This is a guy who can blow up the entire passing game by himself because, as we were saying, it depends so much on timing. And you remember, well, you weren't there last Friday, but I asked Mike McDaniel about the timing element of the passing game and where that ranks in importance. And he said that's number one. That's the most important thing in the passing game is that timing. And we've seen Tua perfect that so well. And his timing with his receivers is so good. But, yeah, I've got to think Bosa is the number one threat, not only because of his physical talents, but because of the potential to disrupt the timing of that passing game all by himself. But Furones, I mean, Kittle or anybody else, or is this definitely Nick Bosa?
Yeah, and obviously you have to mention Trent Williams whenever you talk about the 49ers, probably most likely the top left tackle at the NFL, where for Mike McDaniel bringing in Teron Armstead, he was almost like, Miami's version of having a Trent Williams, especially in the run game, his ability to get downhill. And he's been so effective and being a leader on this offensive line, which just adds to how difficult it is. But, not having him. But, of course, I mean, especially having a couple tackles potentially out, then, yeah, you got to say Nick Bosa with his 11.5 sacks and playing against his hometown team, of course, the St. Thomas Aquinas star, 5-star product. I covered him back when he was in high school a little bit in his recruitment as he went on to Ohio State. So I remember the Bosa brothers, of course. I covered more of Nick, who was younger than Joey, who the Dolphins will then face the following week. But
right.
It's got to be Nick Bosa, especially given the injuries the Dolphins are dealing with.
Yeah, and look, Furones, just to kind of put a bow on this segment here, we talked about the three big games, the three big storylines, and we're taking them one storyline at a time. But you know what's going to happen this week, Furones. It happens all the time. Players are going to roll their eyes because we're asking about this storyline of Mike McDaniel and Kyle Shanahan. And, I want to know how you handle this stuff because what I try to do, I try to get my questions in early in the week. So like tomorrow, I'll try to get those questions in because by the time we get to Thursday and Friday, the players, when we go up to them in the locker room, it's just going to be like, oh, not this again. But you know why it happens is because we might be doing the story for Wednesday and another outlet is doing it for Thursday and TV is doing it for Friday. Everybody can't ask those questions on the same day. Just, we don't have the time, we don't have the space, or, we plan things differently. So, I try to go up to the players Wednesday, tomorrow, and get all of my Kyle Shanahan, Mike McDaniel questions out of the way. That's how I kind of handle it. How do you handle it?
You're giving away your game plan already? Now they know.
Dude,
now they're going to be
I'm giving away storylines for the next 3 weeks. It's all out on the table for owners. They still got to stop it. They might know what's coming. They still got to stop it.
Yeah. Early in the weekend. I mean, Wednesday is the biggest day of media coverage, obviously, because all the cameras are out from TV stations. Because the quarterback speaks on Wednesday. That's kind of a quarterback day across the NFL. So everyone's got to be there for that. And then it's the first day when you kind of get to the players, especially with how many Victory Mondays the Dolphins have had. So we're not really getting players on Monday. It's just been a Mike McDaniel follow-up press conference, which we always enjoy. But yeah, get to them early. I mean, by Friday, then they're done with these questions, and for the most part, we are too. I mean, oftentimes that Friday locker room session, open locker room, is just us kind of hanging out, chatting amongst each other. Maybe, the one or two guys we haven't seen yet, we haven't spoken to, we haven't seen in the locker room, we try to just chat with. But oftentimes it's not even like we're drilling them that hard with questions on Friday, unless there's like some big injury mystery still going on Friday, and try to get as much information as possible going into game day, because obviously Saturday is off from media, or if they're on the road, travel. Definitely get into it early. And also the Dolphins PR staff does a good job of keeping players abreast as to what questions are coming. So I think they understand it. They know when it's coming in. They have a general understanding of what our job is. So I don't see too many Dolphins players getting too bent out of shape over answering a bunch of the questions, whether they're difficult questions or just redundant, and continuing to come at them the same one. So for the most part, this is a good group on this Dolphins team, I from what I've seen.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that this is really a good locker room, and I've covered a lot of these locker rooms starting in 2000, which was an excellent locker room with Jason Taylor and Zach Thomas, Sam Madison, Pat Surtain, Richmond Webb, just a lot of old heads, a lot of veterans. This locker room, I tell you all the time, like I have the guys that I go to as kind of the veteran guys, the guys if I just need some knowledge. John Jenkins and Landon Roberts and Keon Crossan. Chase Edmonds was a good perspective guy. Jerome Baker. It's a very good locker room from that standpoint, that there's a lot of knowledge, good sense of humor. Look, Teddy Bridgewater, you were there when I was talking to him a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling Teddy, I wanted to do a story on him, and he turns to one of the Dolphins PR people, and he goes, "You see what's happening here?" And I go, "What, Teddy?" And he goes, "You haven't talked to me since the Jets game." And I'm like, "Teddy, how do you even remember that?" And he's like, "And I played one play." He goes, "I played one play that game." So the players are, it's a very loose group. It's a good locker room. I mean, one of my favorite corners is the corner of the locker room with John Jenkins, Keon Crossan, Alec Ingold, Brandon Shell, and Greg Little. That's a good corner of the locker room to get a little bit of knowledge, some veteran perspective on the league, and those guys have been around a little bit. So just a quick note about this team and the locker room. It is a good locker room from our purposes. Jalen Phillips, always good for us. I know I'm going to leave people out, but just a quick note that this is a very good locker room from our standpoint, from a working media standpoint. So, all right. So yeah, it is. It really is. So let's migrate to segment number 2, and offensive line and the offense. We can't get away from this. Teron Armstead and the pectoral injury at left tackle. Austin Jackson, the ankle injury at right tackle. Tua's been playing great, but you need that timing, and so. We've seen what happens when Teron is not there. The Jets game, when he went out in the first quarter, 7 sacks. The Minnesota game that he didn't play, 16 quarterback hits. The Dolphins could have some options when you're talking about offensive line replacement. And let me throw this one at you, because this is something that somebody gave me on Twitter. So let's say that Teron is out, but Austin Jackson is healthy. Do you move Austin Jackson to left tackle and Brandon Shell to right tackle and have Greg Little as the backup? I don't think you do that, because I think that's a little too much disruption. But Austin is a left tackle. Is that a viable possibility for owners?
I might err on the side of agreeing with that Twitter user. If that's the case, then I think we've seen that Brandon Shell is significantly better at right tackle, and has all his career experience before this season come at the right tackle position.
Right.
Before joining the Dolphins, he had played exclusively there. He only first was thrown into it. One, Armstead went down in the Middlelands, that game against the Jets, so he had to just pick it up on the fly. Austin Jackson, as much younger as he is than Brandon Shell, he has left tackle experience playing there as a rookie. So, and then obviously, I mean, it didn't work out. He had to get kicked into left guard for his second season, and then didn't work out there, then move him to right tackle with this new offensive coaching staff. So now that's where you want him long term. But specifically for this game, then if you don't have Armstead, you do have Jackson. And I would say keep Brandon Shell right tackle where you know he has been solid, where it was a debate going into Austin Jackson coming back. Do you not want to mess with the chemistry that you have with Brandon Shell at right tackle because he's been so solid there? Now, then maybe I keep that, especially with Tua Tagovailoa, the left-handed quarterback, that being his blind side. Go ahead and make sure that right tackle, you're set. Brandon Shell's been really solid there. Austin Jackson maybe has more of a chance of being okay at either one. He has played there before, so actually I would maybe err on the side of going that way, going in that direction. Austin Jackson at left.
Yeah, and you know the interesting thing, what I told the Twitter user is that you know, the Dolphins, you know, they've been a team so far this year that's gone for the least possible disruption. And so that's what kind of makes it interesting. Do you want to move one person or do you want to move two people? And that leads us to our next Twitter question. And it comes to us from SpaceCat69. Hey, Perk, here's my question for the deep dive. Who steps in at right tackle if Shell covers for Armstead? And will this be sustainable for the next three opponents? So, you know, if Brandon Shell goes to the left side and Austin Jackson is not able to play, I mean, it's got to be Greg Little, right? Or do you go to the practice squad?
Right, but in that scenario, I would go Greg Little at left tackle and Brandon Shell at right tackle, especially since you have seen Shell be so consistent through the stretch that he was filling in for Austin Jackson, the second half of Austin Jackson's absence when Shell was kind of working his way back up through the practice squad and then, you know, signing late after week one to the team. And then Greg Little was filling in initially, and then Brandon Shell took over. So in that case, yeah, again, I would go Shell at right tackle, and then Greg Little would be my left tackle is how I would do it.
Yeah, but if Shell is if Shell fills in for Armstead, then what do you do at right tackle?
Then are you saying then in that with Jackson also out?
That yes, with Jackson also out, yes.
Well, then I wouldn't. I wouldn't fall into that scenario because I would not have Little on the right side with Shell on the left side. I would have Shell on the right side and Little on the left side. So.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and you know what about protecting Tua's blind side? How big a factor is that to you? You know, I mean, Bosa, you've got to deal with Bosa and Tua's blind side. What's the priority there? How do you handle that? And you can have Jeff Wilson or Durham Smythe, you know, stay in for extra protection. You know, but boy, I think I prioritize Bosa. And because that's the bigger threat, right? As opposed to Tua's blind side. To me, that's the bigger threat.
That's a good point. And then, yeah, but there's other ways to do it. Like you said, maybe you're keeping the tight end on that side, Durham Smythe, yep. Jeff Wilson in pass protection. And then also just we mentioned earlier, getting the ball out quickly. A lot of this is based on maybe you end up with more of the RPO, more of that balance because Tua does have a proficiency in that over his career at several levels. So, you know, maybe you mix in, keep them off balance with these creative runs. This is the number one run defense that you're facing, but if you keep them on your toes, if you're able to find ways to be effective and also run to the outside with this wide zone scheme and get the wide receivers involved on sweeps, then maybe that is a possibility where you do keep them honest a bit. So there's a lot of ways, and Mike McDaniel is so creative, innovative that he'll find some other ways. I mean, I know I'm not coming up with all the ways right now. Neither are you on this segment, but it will be interesting once we do see Mike McDaniel in those first few drives. We're probably gonna be surprised with a few things, and then it's gonna be revealed. Okay, this is what they're doing. This is how they're attacking it, and then it'll be on 49ers, of course. D'Amico Ryan's defensive coordinator over there, who has done such a great job, and obviously Kyle Shanahan knows Mike McDaniel so well from so many years. Then it'll be on them to adjust. It'll really be a fascinating chess match from that perspective, especially since there's so much familiarity with both sides.
Right, exactly. And let's go out to Twitter again as we stay on this topic. And this question comes to us from Tabby Keats. And it says, it will make a difference that guys practice at left tackle this week. And I'd like to see more rollouts called for Tua. Now, look, definitely correct that it's going to make a difference having a whole week to practice as opposed to coming into the game in the first quarter like we saw against the Jets, or the second quarter like we saw against Houston when Armstead gets injured. You have a whole week to game plan. The left tackle has a week to get comfortable. Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator, Mike McDaniel, the head coach. Do I need to say Mike McDaniel, the head coach? Anyway, but they can all get more comfortable with each other and going to happen here. So how big a factor do you think that's going to be? Because to me, that's a huge difference. Look, it doesn't mean anybody's going to be able to block Nick Bosa one-on-one, but you get more familiar with the techniques that you're going to use. You get to practice them for days with the correct personnel in place. So you think that makes a major difference or just negligible?
Right, definitely. I mean, you go into the game thinking, boy, we just saw what we saw when Armstead went out in the Texans game, and it was a sack parade for Houston, 4 sacks on Tagovailoa between the end of the first half and then the start of the third quarter, and another one that was negated by a face mask, and then another one on Skylar Thompson later in the game. But that's a scenario where you didn't practice that way all the week with those alignments. Now when you have a week of practice knowing a guy is going to be out, then you can adjust, get guys mentally prepared. Everyone should be mentally prepared regardless, because you have to prepare as if you are going to play, as if whatever worst case scenario, anyone that's on the bench that's in any contingency plan has to be prepared that way. But it's a different story, obviously, when you are not the starter and did not get all those reps, to a scenario where and you're thrown into the game, as opposed to a scenario where you've been practicing that way the whole week, and preparing specifically for certain players like a Bosa. So that'll play a factor as well. I don't think it'll be like those 4 sacks and 10 offensive plays, whatever the number was. It won't be that drastic. I'll bite my tongue because it is Bosa on the other side and a fierce 49ers pass rush. But I think there at least will be more preparation for it, and then it'll be on winning those matchups and scheming it up to be able to handle that pass rush.
Okay, and now the second part of that tweet was rolling Tua out. So really, let's what is the effect on Tua if Armstead and Jackson can't play this week, or we could just say just Armstead. And look, we know that Tua has been very good at decision making. The last 4 games since Pittsburgh, right? 4 games.
Yeah, 4
games, right. Yeah. And so that becomes a factor if you think that he's going to be under a lot of pressure without Armstead in there. And it also branches off into what can Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle do to help. What about Mike McDaniel's play calling? He mentioned that after Armstead went out, as far as he's got to play call to his strengths, to what the guys can do. Does Mike Gesicki become a bigger factor? We talked about Durham Smythe staying in to block, but maybe Gesicki on short routes, right? Maybe something like that, because he's good hands, good size guy. So the effect on Tua, first of all, I don't think you want to roll Tua out, do you? I think you want to keep him behind those 300-pounders where, you roll him out, somebody has 2 or 3 full steps to take a shot at him. I'm not sure that that's the wise thing to do. I'm not sure that we'll see that. So I think Tua stays in the pocket and the timing. That's why it's important that the left tackle is in there and practicing all week, because you can kind of get that timing down, or however you want to attack it, you can get it. But I just don't see many things done differently with Tua as far as getting him out in space or anything like that. But your thoughts, Furones?
And of course, you take away half the field if you roll out too much, and then you roll out to the left and you have him throw all the way to the right side if you want to do that. Getting him to throw on the move, maybe not always the position you want to put Tua in. Like you said, also exposing him, possibly an open field guy, being able to get some momentum going into him. So, yeah, I mean, roll probably with your offensive line. And then I think the key is getting the ball out quick. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, the clock is going to be fast forwarded on them. They're going to have to get open quicker. The play calls are going to be and Tua can find the open receiver quickly. He's able to process things quickly and find that open man. Some RPO action potentially, a little bit more of a mix of that you might see. A lot of different ways that you can do it. Now, the challenge is, of course, if you're trying to get the ball quickly to Hill and Waddle in open space, well, the 49ers are going to try to make sure that they don't have open space early in the route. They're going to be pressing probably, and maybe more so than other teams. So many teams, you see them back off because they don't want Hill and Waddle to be beating them deep. So now if you see that, well, maybe you do take some longer developing plays, take some chances, and seeing if the blocking can hold up to see if you can get the ball downfield, if they are going to be pressing up and daring Hill and Waddle to beat you deep, and then let Tua go ahead and flash that better arm that we've seen him be able to flash through the offseason and training camp and into this season. So where a lot of his effectiveness has been kind of intermediate, safety's playing so far back that even a 20-25-yard pass, the safety's still way behind Hill or Waddle, or even we saw one with Sherfield where the other guys are opening up so much space in the middle of the field. So some of that will be taken away by the 49ers, so they may be trying to press, and they don't have a high blitz percentage, so they're in the lower 20s in that regard, lower half of the league, so they're not sending extra rushers, so that does mean more guys in coverage, so it will be a challenge.
And when we talk about pressing, the possibility of pressing Hill and Waddle at the line of scrimmage, do the Dolphins like that? I'm going to say that they would, because all right, it might result in a couple of sacks or some hurried throws, but I've got to think if you're going to try to press those guys consistently, we're going to win that battle, 7-8 times, and all we need are 2 or 3 of those over the top. And we got a good chance of winning the game. That's how the Dolphins have got to be thinking. And then on the 49ers side, it's got to be like, you know what? We can press them every time, and as long as they don't hit those 2 or 3, we're okay. So which side of that chess match do you think we're more likely to side? I think the 49ers probably change it up a little bit, but I just don't know that anybody has the guts to consistently try to press these guys, because if one mistake and you're done.
Right. And I don't think the 49ers want to end up looking like the Ravens in the fourth quarter where they're giving up wide open touchdowns deep to Tyreek Hill. Now, I don't see the 49ers defense having those breakdowns in the secondary the way Baltimore did late in that game. But, yeah, I mean, maybe they are challenging them. They'll probably mix it up because there'll be a combination of pressing and then leaving the underneath stuff open. A lot of game flow will dictate that, where things stand in certain scenarios, certain situations. And then it's just going to be adjustments, one or the other. So it's really going to be, you mentioned chess match, especially with two coaches, like we've said, that know each other so well. Just constantly thinking ahead, thinking 2 steps ahead. Well, what are the adjustments that this coach that he likes to do when in certain scenarios, and then well, he's probably going to be ready for my adjustment, so I got to be another adjustment ahead. And so that's going to be a fascinating aspect to this game.
It is, and not overcoaching, not overthinking, but not being too predictable. That's kind of the thing with them. And I'll tell you something else, Furones, when we talk about pressing and that, the math changes if the Dolphins are without both offensive tackles, right? Because at that point, the 49ers have got to be thinking our pass rush is going to get to Tua more times than not before those guys can get open deep. So even if we do blow a press coverage and they get behind us, they're probably rolling the dice that, our defense against Tyreek and Jalen starts up front. It's not in the back. It starts up front if the Dolphins are missing those two offensive tackles. So the chess match, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And at least I have confidence in it if you do have Shell at right tackle, because, it was a debate going into last game. It was, all right, do you really want to mess with taking Shell out of there? So at least on the left side, I don't like him too much there, but he's been solid on the right side, and that's what he's been known to do over his career. So at least if you do have, you are going to have him, and then if you're able to have one between Jackson and Armstead, which maybe Jackson is the one that's whose status is maybe more likely to be available for this week, then that's why I said earlier I would try Jackson on the left side, but it's really a tough scenario either way and a tough decision.
Yeah, and so what do you think happens in practice this week? Let's say that Austin Jackson is starting. Let's say that Shell is at left tackle and Austin Jackson is at right tackle. In light of Austin Jackson's ankle, do you rotate Greg Little? Do you give him a few snaps with the first team at right tackle just in case, or is it so important that Jackson gets all of the reps because of the protection packages and Jeff Wilson is there with him and Durham Smythe is there with? Do you go that way? Let's try to jump inside McDaniel and Frank Smith's head for practice here. I think you probably go with your starters and the backup Greg Little gets normal backup reps. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think especially if there is uncertainty about Jackson, where he may or may not be able to play, then yeah, you need to be prepared for contingency plans and get reps with different alignments and different scenarios. So yeah, I would probably be rotating guys if it seems like that Jackson's ankle is really looking good as of Wednesday, and you're pretty confident that he'll be able to play. Then yeah, maybe you do give him a greater share of that practice workload.
Yeah. Yep. All right. All right. And Furones, let's before we wrap this up and go into our final segment, let's digress into Thanksgiving. So you're still eating the turkey? Because I'm still eating the turkey. I cooked the turkey this year. I spatchcocked it, which is, at the risk of using a dangerous term there, you cut out the backbone of the turkey and you flatten it out. I 14-pound turkey cooked in 90 minutes, man. I brined it, put it on some, laid it flat out on the sheet pan, little orange slices underneath it, some onion, some garlic. Excellent, but I'm still picking off of it, man. How about you?
Man, still, we're on Tuesday, Perk.
I know.
What are you doing to yourself?
I'm like a raccoon in a garbage dumpster.
I've always been one historically to really extend the Thanksgiving leftovers, deep. I'm thinking back like into Sunday. That might be my max, and I've always felt like I was someone that would really push it. Where I hear a lot of people talking about Saturday is already pushing on Sunday. I think one year I went into Monday because I could really go all through the weekend with it. I love Thanksgiving meals. I love Thanksgiving food. This year, not as many leftovers. So usually my parents host Thanksgiving, and then that opens it up for me to really have more leftovers available to me throughout the weekend. This year it was my aunt, so then we kind of just each in my family, we brought home a plate to keep. So I had one left over there. And then I also had one left over from a Wednesday night Friendsgiving setup, which was great. So I brought my Tupperware to that, and then so my Thursday Thanksgiving lunch was the leftovers from that day, because like I said, I have stamina for Thanksgiving food. I could keep going with it. So yeah, and then I had the big Thanksgiving dinner, which so a lot of people might be thinking you had a Thanksgiving lunch and a Thanksgiving dinner. Well, my family is Cuban. We eat really late at night, so we're not having like your 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock dinner. Like I won't even say what time. It was pretty late that we had Thanksgiving dinner. So
like the 9 o'clock meal.
That's how we do it. Yeah, yeah. So
I like it, baby.
When I got back from playing football Thursday morning, then I had my leftovers from the Wednesday night Friendsgiving. So it was a fairly big lunch, and then that held me off until we start eating our appetizers and charcuterie before the big Thanksgiving dinner Thursday night with my family.
That's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing. All right. Hey, let's go out to one of our longtime YouTube viewers has a question for us, Cat for Life. And we appreciate you guys always responding with the questions. We definitely appreciate the YouTube viewers and everybody that's on the chat there. And Cat for Life asks, gentlemen, your thoughts about Mike Gesicki having less than 4 catches in these last 3 games? I would say this. It's working, and you know, Mike Gesicki is not an ideal fit for this offense, so that should not be a surprise. As long as Mike Gesicki gets some situational looks, and meaning that he's in the game in some red zone situations and things like that, I think that's good enough. As long as he's not totally ignored or totally lost, because we know this offense prefers a blocking tight end and Gesicki is a receiving tight end, but Gesicki is still an effective weapon. So, you know, you can reduce his usage, but don't ever forget about him because he's a quality player. That's what I would say. Furones, your thoughts?
Yeah, and we've mentioned it ad nauseum. No need to belabor the point even more about the fit. And obviously, you know, Mike Gesicki's tired of answering questions about it, talking about it, and we are too, to an extent. But still a weapon that you can use in certain, especially red zone. Wait till the game when you really need him, which it might be this game, and then and he's a valuable over the top of a defender. Let him throw up a jump ball in the red zone type of scenario, and then watch. He could be a huge plus just having him on this roster, even if on most of the field, in most downs and down and distance scenarios, he might not be the perfect fit for this offense. So, yeah, I mean, he hasn't been used all that much, but then just wait till the game where maybe you do need him, and you have those scenarios in the red zone. You have a lot of situations where you might need that big body receiver because they don't have that in the receiving core. So you might end up seeing that close to the goal line. Let Mike Gesicki go up and get a ball. We were talking about it, me and you sitting next to each other. You know, certain situations where the Dolphins were down near the goal line. I was saying, right here, or you were saying, maybe Mike Gesicki, look out for Gesicki over the middle. I was thinking, I would throw it just like, to his lefty. I would throw it just like that Baltimore one, just throw it right above the crossbar, let him go up and get it, and in the back of the end zone, and he could go and do that. So there will be times, maybe late in the season, this final stretch, where Mike Gesicki ends up being a big plus, even though he isn't the ideal fit blocking wise, the wide zone scheme, and for much of the scenarios and spots on the field that this Dolphins offense operates.
Yep. All right. And so, you know, as we talk about Mike Gesicki and you know, that thing being a little bit overplayed, let's go to another thing that's a little bit overplayed. And you know what's coming here, just like Mike McDaniel knows what's coming every Monday. And this is a question from Twitter from Bub C. This is not a gotcha question, it starts out, because I'm sure you've asked around, but how is it possible that no one really knows what's going on with Byron Jones? No teammates, agents, or team leaks giving up any information on him. Furones, I'll say this, I'm a little surprised by that myself, because I don't really recall the day-by-day Will Fuller situation, but I think usually by now, an agent or somebody with the team or somebody has made a statement, whether off the record or on the record, that, hey, here's what's going on and you know, X, Y, Z. But there really has not been no leak, no substantial informational update. I was saying that he's kind of become this intriguing mystery man, almost a shadowy figure for the Dolphins this season. But I don't know. We don't know if there's been a miscommunication on when he was going to return, or the severity of the injury, or, you know, what was involved in the surgery. But he was expected back early this season, probably even for the opener, and now here we are in week 13, and there's no indication he's coming back anytime soon. So are you surprised there's been no information leak in this situation?
Yeah, and there are people internally that know. It just hasn't come out. They haven't put it out there. So really great job by everyone involved to not let the real information get out. And then now obviously a lot of people wonder and speculate, okay, is it really a contract scenario? Which you never want to speculate, but I mean, then you're kind of left to do that because we haven't really gotten any answers. And, how does a guy end up that was physically unable to perform on the PUP list to start training camp, and then you're hopeful that he's able to be ready by the opener of the whole training camp, and that's months ago at this point. We're talking about late July is when training camp starts, and we are in late November, so do the math, that's 4 months. Then the season starts. Okay, well now PUP to start the season, out for at least 4 weeks. Okay, that's still the first quarter of the year. All right, you still got time. But then it's a week-to-week thing since then. Then the bye came and went, and it still wasn't then. Yep. The next week after that, it's still not now. So I don't know if he's going to travel to California for the 2 weekends and the week of practice in between. And then we are left to speculate. You mentioned Will Fuller. Yeah, I was covering the team last year, and it feels a lot like that, where every week, every Monday after we've gotten through one game's coverage, then you go into the next. Well, is this the week that Will Fuller returns? And then it's taken week by week. Brian Flores last year had to go through the same thing and tell us, no, it is. This is not this week. Yep. Mike McDaniel has a little more fun with it. He's joking around with us. Almost had like a drum roll inducing start to an answer last time, and then said, no, there is no update. So that's a situation the Dolphins are in with Byron Jones, and I would say more likely than not, you're not going to see him. Maybe I'm inclined to believe that from the Will Fuller situation last year, which had its differences, but still feels similar. But I would say, you prepare like you don't have him, and then if suddenly for this final stretch you are able to have him back at practice and then eventually get into a game, then hey, all the better for you. And he could really help this team. And if you have both him and X, and then Kader Kohu now going into the third cornerback role, where you've seen him be so good, elevated to the number 2 spot, and everyone kind of has a little bit less pressure on them from that standpoint.
Yeah, that would be the ideal. So I guess we'll just wait and see, like we've been doing all season when it comes to Byron Jones. Turning the page over here to our final segment, and look, Furones, we've got meaningful Dolphins games in December and January, and you heard how excited Mike McDaniel was about that yesterday, just talking about how this is what it's all about, and these are the things that you play for. And look, when we talk about meaningful December and January games, they have the fans excited, and that's a great thing. But you also get the opportunity to get valuable experience for your players and coaches. You have something to dangle out there for the free agents in a few months, which I know that's looking way down the line. But the meaningful December, January games also mean that you've done something right since February, right? Since you started planning for this season. So what does this mean in the grand scheme of things, Furones, for Tua, for Mike McDaniel, for Chris Greer, for the fans? Tell me your thought, because everybody is excited, and this is significant progress to me.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's since probably early 2000s that the Dolphins aren't going into this stretch of the season playing these meaningful games. And you have your other seasons like, all right, the 2016 team made the playoffs, but you knew that was just kind of like a stretch run where you had Matt Moore playing for Ryan Tannehill, and you needed to just squeak into the playoffs. Right. And then you knew that team wasn't going to really do much once it got in, and they got blown out in the 3-6 matchup with the Steelers. Like last year, they had to win those 7 in a row to come back from 1-7. So it was like at this point in the year, they were kind of in the hunt or trying to get into the in the hunt graphic. It was like they were in the hunt to be in the hunt, but they weren't even making the graphic yet. But then reeling off those 7 in a row, ended up getting there and then actually getting into the top 7 and the playoffs with 2 games left. But then those early games put them in a position where then that one loss to Tennessee took them entirely out. They went from in the top in a wild card spot to eliminated from that one result alone, where even the win against the Patriots in the finale couldn't save them. So that was different. The 2020 season, yeah, they went into that final game, win and you're in scenario, but at Buffalo, you knew it was going to be really difficult. And then, you think of 16, how they had the schedule kind of work out for them. The 08, the Wildcat season, and it took a lot for that to happen because that was the year that Brady was injured since week 1, so it opened up the avenue for the Dolphins to win the division. But really, I mean, it's been 2 decades since you have a team in Miami that you can tell, hey, this is a legit contender that can play these meaningful games in December and then into early January. And you don't see them falling off. You do have the Teron Armstead injury that could create some potential mishaps and steer them in the wrong direction. But this is a team that's built solid that you could see contending for years to come. And you mentioned experience. And sometimes in the NFL, I know definitely most of the time in the NBA, you need to kind of get there first and then lose. Right. And then that valuable experience then lends its way to them being the team that is the experienced team later on. I mean, Buffalo, they're the favorites now, especially going into the year. I know Josh Allen has been uneven, but they had to lose to Kansas City a couple times before they became these AFC favorites like we're seeing now. Kansas City had to lose to New England before they became the Super Bowl champions and then the team that's most respected. Now, there are other scenarios, like Cincinnati went through the AFC last year, and they didn't have to do any of that. Joe Burrow in his second season, and the Bengals hadn't won a playoff game since, 1990, and they go all the way to the Super Bowl last year. So there are multiple ways to do it, but it's really just a lot of fun. You mentioned maybe if it could lead to free agency. Well, I think a lot of that was already seen by free agents this past cycle because you had a Teron Armstead that wanted to sign here. Tyreek Hill wasn't a free agent, but he chose the Dolphins. He was down to the Jets and Dolphins, and hey, the Jets are also competing as well with their young core. But in the trade scenario, Tyreek Hill chose to come to Miami, and Melvin Ingram, and then obviously now at the trade deadline acquiring guys like Bradley Chubb and Jeff Wilson also through trades. But you see it being built, the foundation, and then if it doesn't happen this year, hey, there is a foundation being built that could lead this team in the future. But hey, for now, have fun with it. You try to win this year and see how the ball bounces.
Yeah, that's it. And again, right, that foundation that's being laid, that you're getting this experience that if you don't make that Super Bowl run this year, you're going to have some experience for next year. And next year is really when you should be you'll be better prepared. I'll just say that to make that Super Bowl run. As we look at things that I guess the Dolphins situation right now, Furones, things seem to be going in their favor overall. I know, you've got Teron and Austin Jackson, but look, Jason Sanders is coming off of a good game, right? And which he needed. We'll see about Raheem Mostert and his health, and to see if he can get there and help Jeff Wilson with the passing game. Tua is still playing well. The Chubb, Phillips, Ingram pass rush trio seems to be gaining more and more traction. So, in light of all that, let's go out to Twitter for our final question. It's a question that really is applicable here as we talk about things going in the Dolphins' favor, and it comes to us from Let's Go Fins, and the question is a very simple one. Can Tua be effective without Armstead? And that's a huge, huge question as we look ahead and we talk about how well things are going for the Dolphins. And look, I would say that he can, but for the Dolphins to be able to win, it's going to take a lot of things without Armstead. And so we're talking about the pass protection packages and making adjustments there, whether it's the tight ends or the running backs chipping. We're talking about the running game being able to do things. We're talking about that pass rush trio of Ingram and Chubb and Phillips being able to put pressure on the opposing quarterback. So, yes, Tua can play well, but it's going to take a team effort for the Dolphins to win games without Armstead in there. And we've seen the Dolphins do this without other players being in there with, Brandon Jones and Nick Needham and Austin Jackson, and we go down that list. But, Teron that's a different animal, because of his importance and because of the quality of his play and what he does for other people. So I would say that Tua can be effective, but it's not just up to Tua. It's play calling and it's route running and it's all of that kind of stuff. It's not solely up to Tua. Furones, your thoughts? Can Tua be effective without Armstead?
Yeah, it's a marriage of all those things. And if nothing else, we have seen Tua have to play behind poor offensive lines in the past. So this was kind of a new development these last few weeks where he was protected so well. So, hey, Tua does have experience having to always be under constant duress, the constant pressure. It was all last year. That pass protection was the worst in the NFL. And then a lot of 2020 as well in his rookie year when he was thrown in there a little prematurely, I thought then. But then everything he went through last year behind when it was Jesse Davis and that group. So now, you take away Teron Armstead from him, he kind of has to maybe adjust to go back to that way of thinking in the pocket and having to get the ball out quickly, and just maybe what we saw at the end of the first half and early in the third quarter with all those sacks was a little bit of him thinking back to or feeling like he got too comfortable behind that offensive line that had protected him so well, that gave him all that time. And he took some of the blame. Mike McDaniel took some of the blame for all those sacks. So they were saying it wasn't all on the offensive line. Some of the play calls, Tua faulted himself for holding on to the ball. So, it's a combination of all those things. But the Dolphins are going to need everything to be working in unison against a very good defense and a little bit injury plagued going into the season, bitten by the injury bug. And a lot of people, I want to mention this earlier, a lot of people are going to make this about McDaniel going against his former team and the running backs, Raheem Mostert. Hopefully he's able to play, and Jeff Wilson. But I tweeted earlier today, don't discount Trent Sherfield or also River Craycraft having their revenge game, because, a lot of attention will go on Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, and rightfully so. Maybe it opens it up some for these guys to get open in the slots. But 49ers, they do know those guys. Maybe they were a little bit buried on their depth chart back then, but I think they will be prepared for what they bring as well. But, keep an eye out for those guys in the game plan as well. We haven't mentioned that yet.
Yeah, good tweet. Good tweet on your part. I saw that. And, hey, look, before we get into our prediction, let me bring this up, because we're talking about the offense, and we mentioned the 4 straight games of 30 or more points. But Furones, buried inside of that Houston victory, and we talk about the Armstead injury, the offense didn't score in the second half. And the offense scored 2 touchdowns, right? Because then you had the defensive touchdown and 3 field goals to get to 30 points. And so,
and one touchdown was on a 3-yard drive.
Right. That's what yes. And one was set up, handed to them from Van Ginkel. So are there offensive concerns? Is this offense, quote unquote, fixed? Because the 30-point games come in the soft part of the schedule, and Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, and Houston. And so none of them have great defenses. The Dolphins did what they had to do, so let's give credit where credit is due. But again, when you only score 2 offensive touchdowns against Houston and you need 3 field goals, and the other offensive touchdown is basically handed to you by the defense, is there any significance in that, or is this just win and advance? I think you've got to pay some attention to it, but basically it's win and advance. So I'm not too worried, but it's in the back of my mind. What your thoughts on that?
I'm with you 100%. Yeah, it's in the back of my mind. It was a game that they led 30-0 at halftime, so I'm not going to invest too much thought into what happened in the second half when you're already leading by 30, and when you had your left tackle go out, and you're probably already thinking, okay, when do we get the quarterback out of the game, because now he's getting hit, and we don't need him to get injured when we're leading by 30 points. So, that was part of the equation. And then the second half is with Skylar Thompson. And then the defense very uncharacteristically gave up those couple drives. Now, when you're playing with that lead late, then you play soft, you give up some stuff, and so the Texans were able to take advantage. But it got to a point where with 9 minutes left, it was a 2-possession game, and you really almost sat on the edge of your seat. I started. Well, I didn't start, but I was thinking about if I have to start writing my if they lose lead, which you told me, yeah, well, if it happens, it's just the most remarkable comeback the Texans have ever had, and probably the Dolphins have ever given up. So that would be the easy lead. But, yeah, so it's in the back of your mind. But and now if this offense is challenged, and then this is the greatest challenge right here. You're facing the number one defense. They'll humble you very quickly if it was that, okay, well, you face all these poor defenses these past several games, and then this would humble you extremely quickly if that is the case. But if the Dolphins offense is able to be efficient against this Niners defense and without Teron Armstead, then, I mean, all the more credit you have to give Mike McDaniel, Tua, the receivers, and if the run game is able to get going against a tough 49ers front, then them as well.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, I always like to give credit to the players first. So, yeah, I would give credit to the players for being able to overcome everything that they would need to overcome to get a victory here. That leads us to prediction time, Furones. You want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Whatever you want to do. You run the show. You tell me.
All right. I'm going to go first here. Look, you know, Dolphins, look, you're playing on the road. You don't have Teron Armstead. You've got this 49ers defense that's maybe the best in the league. That's asking a whole lot from the Dolphins, asking a whole lot. But I'm riding that Dolphins train, baby. I'm going Dolphins 17-14, low-scoring game. Jason Sanders gets a field goal in the fourth quarter, maybe not at the last second, but in the fourth quarter, and that's how the Dolphins win. I'm going to ride this train until it stops, Furones. I've learned my lessons about the Dolphins. I'm not going to be burned again. I'm riding the train until it stops. 17-14 Dolphins.
All right. Oh, 17-14. Wow, yeah. That was going. Boy, that was like a Lee Corso style pick where you have a dolphin head somewhere in there. You can reach in the closet and throw one on. With the twists and turns, I thought you were going 49ers there. You know what? In retrospect, maybe I should have gone first and then let you finish because I'm actually going the other way. I think, and I'm not about to do a Lee Corso turnaround on this pick. Yeah, I would say 49ers 23, Dolphins 17. I think it's a lot to overcome without Armstead. And so, hey, I mean, we're talking about a one-possession game on the road. The Dolphins are a 3.5, 4-point underdogs against the Niners. It's a really tough defense. And then, the familiarity with both sides. If Mike McDaniel had everything at his disposal, if he had his left tackle, and then obviously with everything else, we're going to have to monitor Raheem Mostert as well this week, along with Austin Jackson, their availability. Then maybe I feel that the Dolphins could keep this win streak going, but I think it stops at 5. I think this is where it is. The key, I always felt, was for the Dolphins to split these two road games because it's tough to win both. I think the first one, you're also still adjusting to the West Coast time. Then they're going to have the week where they stay on the West Coast out there. So I think they'll be more adapted by the time they face the LA Chargers. And the 49ers are hot as well, coming in on a 4-game win streak. They just shut out the Saints, and that defense has just been so stout. So I see it being very challenging. And then, so I'll have 49ers 23, Dolphins 17.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. But I'll tell you what, we can go out on this winning note, Furones, because we're both going to watch U.S. versus Iran, right? World Cup, baby.
Yeah. Well, make sure you pronounce it correctly, Perk.
Is it what, Iran?
Well, that was a big deal in the press conference. Well, yeah.
All right, Iran. There we go. So thanks for that tip. Yeah.
Pronounced like Tehran.
Well, I thought you were telling me I was pronouncing United States incorrectly.
Oh,
I was going to say, what did that say? Yeah. All right. Well, go USA, right? We can agree on that. All right.
What's our prediction there? What's your prediction there?
2-0, baby. 2-0.
Okay. Yeah. I believe that we will win. Before the game against England, I said I believe that we will win or draw, and then I was correct about that.
Right. I believe that we will draw is not usually Shannon and bars, but hey, you know, that's all Iran needs to advance, right?
Yeah, is that right? Right. So, but I got USA going with the win and advancing.
There we go, baby. So we'll see what happens. That's your boy Furones. I'm your boy Perk. Tune in next time, next Tuesday at noon. Dolphins Deep Dive. We'll see you.